Thank you all for being here. Let's see. Are you people fine over there? If you want to move on this side, I feel like the big piano is blocking you.
So piano is always in the way.
We're thrilled to have Christian Teztlaff and Lars Vogt with us tonight, playing together as a duo for the first time in Houston. And a welcome back. You've both played with the symphony in the past, right? Mm-hmm. And they're just here having played in New York last night. So on top of being very happy to have them here to perform for us, they were gracious enough to accept to discuss the program with us. It's a fascinating program, and tell us a little bit perhaps about how they met each other and started playing together, because you've played together quite a bit. You sometimes play as a trio. How did all of that begin?
Well, we first met each other actually just coincidentally on a train when I just had finished school when I was 18, and Christian was already zooming around playing concerts. And then I sat next to this violinist and got to talking for these 3 hours between Cologne and Hanover. But Christian didn't remember that later on. So.
That's amazing, really? It was that coincidental?
Yeah. So from my side, it seemed to have not been love on first sight.
And then about 3-4 years later, we did the first chamber music tour, I remember, with Sabine Meyer and with Heinrich Schiff.
But that came about, somebody else had organized that? And
our agent had put that together as a tour, I guess. And and then Christian was sweet to ask me, would you play some recitals together? And then we started about something like 25 years ago to play recitals together, and we've done so many projects ever since. We did do a chamber music festival in Germany, in Heimbach, in a power station between Cologne and Aachen. Every year for now, this year is the 20th time that this festival is running. And so lots of different kind of chamber music. We've become very close friends. We play trio together, as you said, with Tanya, also with Christian's sister. So it's a very close link.
And the program tonight is a really fantastic program of 4 masterpieces, I think we can easily say. And each piece tells us so much about the personality of the composer and is so distinctive in terms of what each composer does with the violin and the piano.
I was worried when we cooked up this program, because there is strange pieces in it, at least 2 strange pieces, and only one that is a known sonata, the C minor sonata by Beethoven, is a very strong and accessible piece. The others all have some angle of peculiarity to them, but now in the last 4 days, this is the 5th concert of our tour, we must have done something right, because it doesn't help to put a program of 3 wonderful pieces together that might cancel each other out, and this seems to lead to a beautiful climax in the seldomly heard rondo by Schubert, and it puts, as we open with the Beethoven, it puts a spotlight on the fascinating sonata by Bela Bartok, which I always say I don't even pretend to understand what it is about. It is a landscape of unknown sounds. It's a story of beauty, loneliness, and piercing pain. But I cannot grasp how he does it. That it seems in the end you think, only this could have been like it. But it is like a surrealistic landscape. Where we move through it and we look at things that are threatening or utterly beautiful, and they are alien to us. So it is, after the quite familiar and quite easily readable human emotions of the Beethoven sonata, we come to something that's fascinating in a very different way. And then a Mozart sonata, which is also not often heard, and after the intermission, it seems to be such a joy to come come back
yes, I love the way you ordered that. That you have the Bartok, which is the most gnarly, and it falls into that category of modernist pieces that you cannot analyze, and it's unclear what makes it right, that it holds together, and yet it does in some very deep way.
Also in the last one of the Mozart, one would say it's unclear how he does it, why it touches you. It does. Most of our music anyway defies, of course, explanation and words, but at least we are quite sure that it's an exciting journey, at least from the program.
Well, and in each piece, the composers are kind of pushing the envelope in a sense, doing something extreme. And you mentioned the Schubert. The Schubert is an extreme piece for Schubert as well.
Yes. When we first played it through, Christian said, "This is what it sounds like when Schubert is in a happy mood." And so it's a very, it starts quite dramatic. So one could still think that this could turn into a very dramatic and a dark mood, possibly. But then there's a dance that is so full of exuberance and virtuosity. It really demands also of the performers to play for their lives,
which is rare in Schubert. Because,
and which makes it also great fun to play.
And then you say it's an exuberant, happy piece, but it's in B minor. So you already see that there is contradictions at work, and it's a movement of 750 measures. So it's really trying to get a message home, and it does. Yeah.
And the Beethoven also, as Beethoven is of that period, it's so incredibly dramatic and romantic. It's mentioned in your program notes that the key of C minor seems to always bring out from Beethoven, it's the Fifth Symphony, it's the Third Piano Concerto. It's extremely romantic in one way, but also the very opening of that sonata is so Beethovenian in terms of this very tight cell that then propels the rest of the movement.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Coming from really, as you said, a small cell developing massive developments. For me, there's a lot in the C minor, in the outer movements. There's sort of like a cold fire in it that is burning through it.
Yeah, it's a fantastic piece. Have you've done all of the Beethoven sonatas, I would imagine?
No,
you haven't done all of them?
No.
Still on the journey.
And you've recorded the Brahms, but...
That we have, yes.
So is there a thought of doing the cycle of... Yeah, you've recorded Mozart as well. Yeah.
There's a thought of it. It's in every violin piano recital, which still nowadays sometimes is announced as a violin and piano recital. The fact is that it's usually piano concerti with the accompaniment with a violin. So to say, let's record the 10 Beethoven sonatas means for him that he has to learn 10 Beethoven piano concerti, and I have to learn a few lines. So it is really, to record 10 of them is really up to him.
Well, and the Mozart sonatas, when they were published, of course, they were considered piano sonatas with violin obbligato.
Same to Beethoven, and even later. It's
even Brahms, I think.
Yeah, even Brahms. So it is only nowadays that one always seems to need a very important person, a star, and some lesser. Even on posters, you see a big name and a small name. So
sometimes or no name.
Yeah, it's totally the opposite of what the genre and the composer want.
But us pianists, we're modest people, So.
And you've also been involved.
I'm so proud of his modesty.
You've been involved in playing new music as well, and have you commissioned works as a duo?
As a duo, no.
As a duo, not yet, no. But there's thought of us as a trio now to commission a piece. We will actually perform a premiere this year in Heimbach at the festival by the Estonian composer Erkki Sven Tüür. So, but there's constant contact with composers. Jörg Wiedmann is a close friend of ours.
Right. And was that the piece that was in the works? There was a new piece in the works, right?
It didn't happen.
Hasn't happened yet. Or may it still happen?
Could well be.
We are all still young.
We're all still hoping.
No, but it's interesting. We were originally in discussion with this program, and there was a new work that was going to be on it, which was not ready, and so it was replaced with the Bartók. And I think the thing about the Bartók is there's nothing still that really sounds more modern than that. I mean, much of music that's being written today does not have as much of this energy of
exploration,
strangeness, and exploration as music that's written in the 20s and earlier part of the century. It's an amazing thing how 100 years later, the strangeness of some of the things that were experimented with 100 years ago is not approached by things that are brand new today.
Yeah, and you might say also the scherzo and the Beethoven sonata will never lose its sparkle of innovation, and that's if a genius is on a good streak, then these things don't age.
And they somehow are not static. They don't stay the same. You come back to them, and they're constantly. Beethoven, of course, is known for that in a sense that he never stays the same. You know, when you're rehearsing Beethoven, it starts to get better, and then it gets worse in a sense because you're constantly discovering more things in the music.
And we're still filled with this revolutionary energy.
Yeah.
That's what I'm always astonished about. I mean, this is music that was written about 200 years ago, over 200 years ago, and yet this revolutionary energy that is in it, we still feel bubbling today when we look at the score, when we play it, when we try to discover things, and that it stays as fresh as ever.
But that's just an attitude towards life that is transferred into music, and that some people, we try to have this attitude to that one has to apply the whole person, the whole body, and the whole mind and heart into something, and then it will still have the possibility to grow, and that's what lives in these people so strongly.
And I think that's one of the great thrills. We feel that even more in live performance, that listening to the recordings, the preserved recordings, performances are a wonderful way to get to know a piece of music, but still to hear, Beethoven being invented in the moment and the things that will only happen in that moment, and that spontaneity is something that music thrives on. Really.
Yeah, with all the risk taking, things can go wrong. We play, with the piece, and we are spontaneous. It's never the same. And
isn't that the thrill of watching ice skating as well?
Yeah, so there's ice on the stage here tonight.
Never know whether double flip works.
Well, we want to give the artists a moment to take a break, but if you have a question, we could probably take one or two.
Better be good.
Yeah?
So when you were talking about the composer, I was curious about the dividing line between the performer and the composer, and do you ever cross the line and you compose?
Well, I have no talent for composing. The only time when I dare to utter something by myself is when I write cadenzas for the violin concerti, be it Haydn, Mozart, or be it also in the first performances I do of new pieces. Otherwise, I have no talent, so I cannot judge about that. But I know in playing pieces by composers who were performers, which is almost all of them at that time, you feel you have a friend, somebody who knew. This also has to be played, and he's giving very good hints about where the music should go, just because he comes totally from the field. And that is something really to appreciate, as opposed to the idea of somebody writing something into the abstract. Mozart, Beethoven, they would perform, of course, these pieces themselves, and that is quite a strong thing.
One of the things about our audience is we have a very present jazz part of our series, and really great jazz players. So our audience is very attuned to the energy of jazz musicians as well, and that spontaneity is something, as a classical musician, which is always an incredible inspiration and envy, you know, for me, because whatever happens on stage, they go with it. And of course, classical musicians have to do that as well. But it's an interesting thing when that overlap of improvisation, composing, and performer are all in the same place, which is what happens for jazz musicians.
Yeah. I guess the difference is maybe that for us it's not so much about the what we play, because we have a score there. For the jazz musicians, of course, you never quite know what they're going to play, even. Whereas for us, it's all about the how. How do we do it? You know, this first line of Beethoven, how do we find that color? How do we find the shade for the answer of that? How is Christian responding to that? How am I going to have the accompaniment underneath? How do we bring it to bubble or the melodic lines or whatever? So it's all about finding the expression.
But we meet in the main task of making the connection with the audience. So to speak directly, in our case, through to have another person speak to you, in Beethoven, Schubert, whoever, and for any musician, that's the ultimate goal. So, and that's not so very different, because you have to get the feeling of a room and the audience as well.
And ideally, a classical performance should also feel like it's being invented in the moment.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We look forward very much to the music.